Should be good. Let me make sure. Yep, we good.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, we want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the elect. And we're back with another episode of Sabbath Sanctuary. This is episode 21. We can't afford to be emotional in these times. And very important lesson or title, right, to always keep in mind. And interestingly enough, regardless of how well you may think you have your emotions in control, right, and under control, you'd be surprised, right, how you'd react in certain situations. But the moral of this lesson is that it's very important to remain spiritual, okay, about these things. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going off if you get upset or if you get angry. Those feelings arise and they happen. However, it's how you react to that, right, and what actions you take in that moment that is the defining factor. Now, as we are in these times where they even have people already being sent to places like Alligator Alcatraz, and you're going to have situations where we're going to be put in unjust, right, and unfair situations, right, whether it's dealing with centurions or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it may be even a misunderstanding. All right. However, based on how you react in that situation, knowing that the odds are really stacked against us in this world, that could put you in even a worse situation, right? One example is you often see this case where, you have an Israelite get stopped by a centurion, and, an arrest is really, it doesn't mean you're going to jail, right? It just means that they're pretty much apprehending you and they're taking you to the station for whatever it is, whether it's further questioning or whatever the case may be. But sometimes you have Israelites that don't make it, or people that don't make it even to the precinct because they couldn't keep their emotions in check. And sometimes they're actually right? They're correct. They're not doing anything wrong, but how they're reacting to the situation and not applying wisdom and rather letting their emotions get the best of them is what ends up putting them in a worse predicament. So as we enter the times of Jacob's trouble, where you have to make rational decisions, and the slightest mistake won't be the Lord's going to respawn you in a hotel in Manhattan somewhere like it's GTA 4. All right, the slightest mistake could be the end of your life, right? So you have to be very mindful in what decisions you make, right, and how you make those decisions. But I have a quick precept here, and then I will pass it. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 10, verse 16. And this is what Yahweh Shai told us, right? Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. So he already let us know what is the condition of the battle, right? Now, if you're a sheep in the midst of wolves, what does that tell you? That tells you that you're already at a disadvantage. So if a wolf comes up to you, you're not going to be a tough guy and say, yo, what's up? That's, what you're trying to do right now, because you know the position you're in. So the Lord said, be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Okay, and that's the key part right there, because the power is in being wise as a serpent, being able to apply wisdom in whatever situation you're in, because that's really our best defense at this point. The scriptures mention wisdom being a defense. Wisdom is our best defense at this point. You don't have the power to turn into the Hulk. You can't teleport. You don't have super speed. Okay, you don't have all those things right now. What you do have is a brain. All right, and the Spirit has showed us how to properly use that in these situations. So if you let your emotions get the best of you and you overreact to certain cases because you're heated, even if you're correct, you could end up in a negative situation. But yeah, you brothers got it.
Hey, Khan. Yep, I got a quick one as well. And just going based off of what you said, and also the theme, right? Being we can't afford to be emotional in these times, and really the truth has been kind of teaching us, right, or training us to be more logical, right, or in spiritual and less emotional. Which the more spiritual you become, right, the more numb you become to things. And when you're numb to things, then you're less likely to react, in a just a uncontrollable fashion, right? Because really, when you get emotional, when you get emotional, right, it's not that you don't have emotions, because emotions are something that we all are born with, right? The Heavenly Father has emotions. So we don't say emotional as in the sense of having emotions is a negative thing, but in the sense of making decisions based off of emotions, that's something you can't do, right? As a judge, as a righteous judge, you can't do that. That's why even in courtrooms, right, a judge, if let's say it's something's happening and a judge has to proceed over a trial, if there's a conflict of interest, whether it be like a family member or somebody they know, then they actually can't proceed over that trial, right? It's called it's a conflict of interest, and it's because their emotions would be involved in the sentencing, all right, or presiding over that judgment, over that trial. So us being in a mindset of wanting to be judges, right? The Lord, this whole time period that we're in right now is kind of like a testing period to see how well we are as judges, right? And that's why the Lord said that us being faithful over a few things, He'll make us Lord over many things. But getting the scripture here in Proverbs 14, verse 29, it says, "He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly." In the NLT, it says, "People with understanding control their anger," right? And that is a very important virtue to have, right? Temperance, right? Self control, because when you have that self control, you're able to rationalize or think through your steps, right? Think through what you're going to do, or how you should respond to something, rather than just reacting. Okay, just reacting gets a lot of people in trouble, and that's why you have a lot of Jake specifically that are caught up in some in the jail, right, and caught up with legal problems, is because they just react without thinking, right? We saw a video, right? Lord willing, could bring it out earlier today about a Jake, and he wasn't in the wrong, but yet because of how he was reacting, it didn't help his situation. And a lot of our people, especially the men, they lack the ability to discipline themselves, and it's because not being raised by a father, right, and an actual stern father. Because you have some men, Jake, that have been raised by their fathers, but their fathers was raised by their mothers, so it's like it's not it doesn't really help. But a lot of our people were raised by just single mothers, and we know how women are over emotional and they use their emotions to dictate their decisions, which is very problematic, and especially for a man. So running that back, it says people with understanding control their anger, right? And we have that understanding, right? We understand the times that we're in. We understand, who is in authority, right? We understand who has the power, the complexion for the protection, right? We understand all of these things, so we move accordingly, which is what Yahweh Shai told us, right? When you're in the way of when you're amongst the adversary, basically, roughly paraphrasing, I know I'm about to butcher it, but basically be at peace with him, right? Until you are out of the way of him, because he's not going to show you any type of leniency. He's not going to show you any type of, favor. Okay. And running the second part back, it says, "A hot temper shows great foolishness." Okay. A hot temper shows great foolishness. And hey, when you're in a position to where Esau wants a reason. They want a reason to, attack you, to get on you, to arrest you, and especially for us, right, to kill you. You don't want to act foolishly in that regard. That's what keeps us innocent. That's what keeps us pure, is by our actions, being aligned with the mindset of Yahweh Shai, and not having the ministry to blame. Because when you move foolishly, then you could blame the ministry. And we've seen a lot of individuals do that claim to be in the truth. They don't actually use the knowledge and understanding that we have received through the truth in their day to day, and it ends up costing them either money or time, or just a bad reputation, right? And we don't want that. So yeah, I'll pass it to the next brother.
Hey, Khan, Zaquan, you mentioned something that sparked my spirit with this one here, which is basically thinking of, as the scripture says, that everything written aforetime is written for our learning, right? So all these things that we pretty much read in the scriptures, it should be as a guide, right? So that way we don't have to personally or physically have to go through certain experiences to get that wisdom that we're looking for, because it's already written in the scriptures, right? For example, when you think of the story of Joseph, right? When he was in Egypt and he was framed, right, by Potiphar's wife. Okay, most men, I speak for myself first and foremost. I know how I would react to that on instinct, right? That I didn't do anything. I'm not at fault. And this bitch is trying to throw herself at me. I run away. And then she frames me, make it seem like I was trying to get in them draws and shit. And then I end up in jail. Like, bro, I didn't even touch you. I didn't even do nothing to you. But yet I'm serving time because you lied on me. Most people will be pissed off and they'll be like, I'm really gonna put this bitch in the bag at this point, right? And at that point, you get yourself even in more trouble. But we always have to remember that being a man of the Lord, you're going to go through your trials and your tribulations and your temptations, ultimately for the Lord to stabilize you, to make you a better judge, right? To be able to go through certain things that makes you have a better outcome when it comes to problem solving, right? So we're living in a world where we're always going to face conflict, right? The Lord already told Ezekiel, he told Ezra, he said, what? These people are not going to listen to you. All right, but even though they're not going to listen, go out there and do the work, right? That can be frustrating at some point. But you can't be emotional when it comes to dealing with people and situations when they arise, right? There's something called emotional intelligence. I'm gonna read a little bit about that real quick. All right, it says it refers to, or otherwise known as EI. All right, EI. All right, and it refers to the ability to perceive, use, understand, manage, and handle emotions effectively. Okay, and that is very, very important to have what is emotional intelligence, especially when you're in a leadership position. Okay, because you have so many different people coming at you with different things, different thoughts, different words, different actions, that you have to find the medium, the balance that works for all in order for the greater good to succeed, so to speak, right? So us being the leaders of Israel, all right, or the Lord prepared us to be leaders of Israel, all right, as is written, we're going to be what kings and priests. Okay, you have to be emotionally balanced. Okay, you cannot be, on some type of trip time where anything happens, you get triggered, right? I do that all the time when I work on my emotions, especially when I'm driving. You got dumbass people in the streets that will just piss you off at every 2 seconds, right? But you got to be emotionally intact, so that way you can, balance yourself, because you might end up screwing up everything. You know what I mean? So it says here, it involves recognizing and managing one's own emotions while also being able to understand and respond to the emotions of others. The concept of emotional intelligence includes several key elements such as self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. These components, and that's pretty much characteristics of somebody who has charisma, right? When you go into the word charisma, it pretty much goes back to the spirit of the Lord that's on you. And when you have the spirit of the Lord on you, you get to understand that, yes, things that's going to happen in the flesh are just that, things for the flesh. That's why the apostle Paul said that we cannot be carnally minded, right? Because a carnal mind is what? It's enmity to the Most High, right? So we have to understand that, oh, yo, you know what? Yeah, Satan's trying to fuck with me, trying to get me off balance, but the Lord is telling me, yo, get back on track, handle this the right way as I see fit. Always remember, like, yo, how am I going to handle this, right? Even if there's nobody there, how is Yahushua judging me based on this right here? This is a test. Did I pass it in the eyes of the Lord, or did I fail in the eyes of the Lord? And if I failed, where did I go wrong, and how do I correct it next time if I face this similar situation? Okay, and you can think of it even on a higher level when persecution arises, right? We think of, on both sides, when you have a lot of people coming in now who are going to be asking so many different questions, or they might be trying to be a scoffer, whatever the case may be. How do you handle that, right? Spiritual intelligence, spiritual emotional intelligence, I'm gonna add that, right? How do you handle that? And then you look at when we get persecuted, how are we gonna handle that? Are we going to be on the type of time where you have people that just run off and scurry off and become apostates? All right. Or are we going to be like Yahushua, who's going to be like, you know what? This is how it's supposed to go down. Right. So I'm going to deal with it all the way to the end so I can be fulfilled in my glory. Okay. So it says here, These components help individuals navigate social complexities, communicate effectively, and build stronger relationships both personally and professionally. Emotional intelligence is often measured through various models, including trait models that focus on self-reported behavioral dispositions and ability models that assess the capacity to solve emotional problems. So that's a whole bunch of gibberish. We don't care about that. But the point is to have emotional intelligence in anything and everything you do, right? And it's always good to practice with yourself, right? We go through things on a daily basis where you can use that as, as a test, to check to see where do you stand when it comes to your emotions being tested. Are you going to be the one that if you get pulled over, even when you're right, are you going to end up being wrong because of how you deal with it? Or are you going to use wisdom and let the Lord prevail in that situation? It's always good to let go. Like the church say, let go and let God, right? We actually let go and let the Lord do his thing. There's many times where we could take matters into our own hands. We could literally overpower people, right? Whether it's by being witty to overpower them or being physical to overpower them. But we say, now, you know what? I'm going to take the low and let the Lord take over from there. And it always works out best for you in that situation. You know what I'm saying? So when they come in, rather than fight because you're pissed off that they broke through your windows and through your doors and shit, hey, leave it to the Lord and let him give you that spiritual power so you can really, shake some shit up. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's what we're looking forward to. But you got it, bro.
I got a precept here in the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 41. I don't know if brothers already read it, but Ecclesiasticus 41, verse 13, it says, "A good life has but few days, but a good name endureth forever. And so, my children, keep discipline in peace, for wisdom that is hid and a treasure that is not seen, what profit is in them both?" And the whole reason of us accumulating all this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding here about Shemashai is so that we can exhibit it in front of the nations. And part of that is what is that long suffering that brothers have mentioned. And the main reason why you want to make sure you get this down is because you want to cause the ministry to be blamed. The ministry is attached to the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. And already the name of the Lord is not looked on in the great light here. And you don't want to add on to that insult to the Lord, right? The Lord doesn't want someone who's going to embarrass him. The Lord wants someone who's going to exalt him and someone who's going to be, that he's going to be proud of, right? And this is I guess, a lesson that's most important to especially men, right? More so than women, even though it's important to all us all, because unlike women, men have strength to substantiate their like wild, their outlandish, behaviors, right? A woman, like amongst women, there's a whole lot of quarrels, right? If, that's all it ever is. That's why even the statistics says that men die more than women, or at least men are more destructive than women. It's because when men can't control the emotions, they resort to their strength, and then they start killing, and then everything gets crazy. And even in a woman, if a woman is, if she's not peaceful, if all the men around her don't indulge in her wild behavior, like her brother, her father, her husband, boyfriend, the cops, if everybody's like, yo, you wilding out, chill out, and don't feed into her anger, nothing bad really ever happens, right? So men are really this message is really important for men, because they are the ones who can really impact the world on a physical level. And I think even here in the book of Philippians, let me see right here. The book of Philippians chapter 4 verse 5 says, "Let your moderations be known unto all men," right? The Lord is at hand. And so this is coupled with the name, right? The important things that we're doing here is we're establishing a reputation. First and foremost, a reputation for the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, right? If we claim to be for Yahweh Bashem Yahushai and we claim that the Lord is holy, well, then the men associated with Yahweh Bashem Yahushai must be right, must be holy, and we must be long suffering, and we must be an exceptional human beings upon the face of the planet Earth, right? So this is very, very important because anger can destroy everything that you have built. If you don't know how to control your emotion, like Aran just said, you drive and someone cut you off, and you do some wild shit, you ram into your car. Now you ain't got no, you're going to work, you're going to go to see a family. I mean, even if you skid off the road and lose your life because of that simple, because of that, it's not really a simple, because of that simple choice, it costs you greatly. So if you don't have control over your emotions, you ruin everything. Even a good name, which can last for eternity, but instead of having a good name, you get a bad name, and now you're an example, right? And then now every time somebody want to say something, it's your name, you know. Even though you may have been a good man from the beginning, because of your latter end, you couldn't control emotions. Something happens, that's what you're known on forever, you know. So that's pretty much my 2 cents on it, and I'm just gonna pass it on to the next brother.
Hey, real quick, I just want to give a quick testimony of I guess what you just said about, you know, acting out of anger when you're emotional, right? And this is when we're actual kids growing up, and that was a moment in our lives where it changed the way I operate when it came to, like, you know, acting out of impulse or acting when you're angry, you know, to a point where ever since that time, whenever I'm angry, I don't speak, right? I just detach myself and wait till I calm down and then let reason, you know, take center stage, right? But when we were kids growing up, I remember one time, it was me and Bakar, and we were sitting like in a different part of the house and shit, and we're outside. So where we were sitting at, it was still under construction. So they had stones and everything, rocks and stuff like that laying around. So I'm sitting on the other side of, you know, it was like an open space, like a yard. So I was sitting across from him, and we had friends and stuff. We were all chilling, and you know, so he starts picking stones and he's just throwing it in my direction, like, you know, playing around, you know. But as he's throwing it, I'm like, yo, it's gonna hit my head. You gotta be careful. And he's just laughing and he just kept throwing it. So I was like, yo, I said, stop, man, you're gonna hit me if you keep doing it. Stop. So he threw one, and it went right over my head, almost hit me. I was like, yo, that's a big ass stone. So I got angry. I picked up a fucking stone and I threw it right in his direction, and it hit him right in his leg, right? I think his shin area. And I heard the sound like, pah. And then like a few seconds after that, I see him bleeding, you know? And then, of course, like immediately I felt so bad. I'm like, damn, like, you know, like I wasn't trying to hurt him, but the result of anger brought a destructive thing that I couldn't take back. You know, so here it is. I see my younger brother bleeding and he's crying all loud and shit. And everybody gonna hear that he's crying. So now I'm in trouble. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, he's crying, doing all this shit. You know, they carried him, took him upstairs. Now my dad is pissed off. He's like, what happened? And then the story comes out, oh, you know, we're playing it and I took a stone and I threw it and I hit him. And to him, he's like, well, he didn't hit you with the stone. What made you think it was okay to launch a stone? And you're older. You're the older one. You should know better. If anything, you should have moved or go someplace else. You know, you throw a stone and now you've damaged. He's injured now. He's hurt. You know, so now they got to do all this treatment and all this stuff. And I'm sitting here miserable. You know, he's crying and then we cry. We all crying now because you know, that shit hit me so hard. I felt sorry. You know, I'm sorry, giving her hugs and everything. I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to hurt you. You know, but it was damage that I couldn't take away. You know, and I sat next to him. We took him to the hospital and everything. And I was just so sorry about the whole situation. You know, and ever since then, you know, growing up, we got very tight after that because I was like, yo, man, yeah, you my brother. It's just us two. You know, I can't afford to be hurting you. Like, shit, I'm supposed to be defending you if anything. You know, so that shit alone just like put me on a different mindset when it comes to dealing when you're angry. No matter what it is, no matter what anyone says or anyone does to you, always don't react based on what they're doing. Assess the situation and then let the Lord deal. You know, calm down a little bit, think about it, you know, and then just say, all right, what I'm going to do right now, is it reversible? And how does it impact the situation? Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? Does it put me in a better situation or a worse situation? Right? Does it solve the problem? Like all these different things you have to think about on the spot before you make that decision. And you know what's going to happen? The Lord will always plead on your behalf, even if you're in the right and the world makes it seem like you're wrong. The Lord will always plead on your behalf. And that's why I went back to Romans, the 15th chapter, that these are examples that we have to use in order for the Lord to work on our behalf, right? Because if we take matters into our own hands, what happens is now we don't really give the Lord room to operate, you know, because it's like, okay, what am I going to do for you? You already took judgment into your own hands. What do you want me to do? Judge against you now because you judge wrong judgment, you know? So it's like, you might be right, but it's how you go about it that could end up with you being right actually or wrong, you know? And I got a quick precept and I'm going to pass it. There's a book of Proverbs, chapter 20 and verse 24. It says, man's goings are of the Lord, Yahweh. How can a man then understand his own way? Right? So no matter the predicament you may be in, right? You might be running late for work. Next thing you know, you forgot your wallet at home. Damn, bro, what the, you know, you pissed off. That just ruined your whole day. You're going to turn back and go pick up that wallet, or you just going to tough it out the whole day and wait till you get back home? Little shit like that. It's like nobody caused that problem, but you're pissed off because it's something that it's kind of like inflicted. You forgot something. Now you're pissed, right? Now it's ruining your day. Now you're talking to everyone all crazy and shit. Somebody comes say, hey, good morning, how you doing? I mean, shut the fuck up, man, I lost my wallet. You know, it's like, you can't do that, you know? So you got to have emotional intelligence in any and everything you do, especially when you're dealing with people in Babylon or at work or whatever the case may be. All right, but you got it, bros. Yeah, Khan. Have a quick precept on that, because as you mentioned, I was thinking about the incident with King David and Nabal. I think that was his name. And how technically, right, if the Lord had, and that's why the Lord intervened, right? Had the Lord allowed David to do what he did, he would have still been in the wrong, because technically what Nabal did, though it was stingy, it wasn't like he was breaking the law, right? It wasn't like he didn't have to give David anything, right? But it's like unspoken, law to show gratitude. Now, that's one of the hardest things, to where even King David, a man after the Most High's heart, was susceptible to that, right? And he would have done it. He said he was going to do it. He was going to slay all of Nabal's household, all the men, for him being so stingy, right? And basically being a niggard. But I was going to say that as much as it is important to keep your emotions in check, that goes for more than just even anger, right? Having self-control or temperament goes into a lot of different aspects, and it helps you deal with different kinds of temptation, right? Because it's an impulse. Just like when you see a fine ass chick, you get excited. That's also an impulse. There are different genres of it, but it's still an impulse that you have to learn to control, right? Because these Babylon teaches you to act impulsively. Before you even think, you're already moving. Now, I saw a video of a chick, and the worst part is a majority of these people who act that way are in the wrong, and then they're loud, wrong, and impulsive. So there's a dude riding his bike. I guess he was doing delivery or whatever, and he had a camera, and this chick is driving the car. I guess he was going the regular speed limit. She's going faster. So she's basically right behind him and just like tries to overtake him while he's on the bike, and nearly like hits him. And he's upset. So he's basically like cursing her out, pulls up next to her car by the window and starts cursing her out. Her dumb ass rolls down the window and starts cursing him out too, right? And he's like, yo, I'm going the speed limit. What are you doing? This dumbass is she's turned around and cursed him out so much that she went and ran right into the car in front of her. Boom. Now she got a problem in front of her and on the right. Dude gets out of his car, comes to her window, and now she's arguing with him and him, But just because of that lack of self-control to know, hey, where are you in such a rush to go? It's a red light. You're going to stop anyway, Anyway, this is Ecclesiasticus chapter 1, verse 22. A furious man cannot be justified, for the sway of his fury shall be his destruction. And that's because when you're furious, you're acting without fully thinking of the consequences. And I remember that when I was younger, I used to be a hothead. I remember I get so mad, I just don't see anything, just black, and just start throwing hands everywhere, right? Haran got a lot of scars because of that. But one thing I learned, hey, man, I was a child that's fake as a child. But one thing I learned was I remember when we first came to Babylon, I used to get into a lot of fights in middle school. And one time I remember this, I got into a fight with this kid and I punched him in the eye, and he sort of just stopped, like he was just holding his eye the whole time. And the realization dawned upon me. I was like, yo, I hope I didn't mess up his retina, or he didn't just lose functionality in his eye. And immediately I felt bad. And from that point on, I never got into I don't remember the last time I even got into a fight, because I thought about yo, I was so angry that I almost took out his eye, but for what? Over words that were exchanged. If he lost his eye, that'd be gone forever, right? Or just because you couldn't control you could have just walked away and ignored what he said. But as we're reading here, right, a furious man cannot be justified, for the sway of his fury will be his destruction, because your fury will basically swing you, whichever forth that it goes. And it reads here, a patient man will tear for a time, and afterward joy shall spring up onto him. So when you're in these situations, it burns, right? That you feel like you can't do anything about it. But for that period of time that you can control yourself, if you can stop for 2 to 3 seconds and just think, that's all it takes. Just stop and actually think, okay, I'm pissed off. She just spat in my face. But if I actually put my hands on her, what's going to happen? You know, I might end up behind bars, right? I have a family. I got to do the works of the Lord. So when you start thinking like that, you start to see that, you know what? The situation you're in is not that big of a deal as you would have felt it to be had you been in that state of emotion, right? And that's why it says here, a patient man will tear for a time, right? You'll go through that temporary suffering of discipline. But over time, as it becomes more habitual, it becomes normal for you to not lose your cool over the slightest things. And we're going to face a whole lot of situations like that, where the Lord himself will try us, right? Whether it's in getting angry or in even losing a loved one, right? How do you react in that time? Some people, they just give up all hope. You know, I just lost my son, or I just lost my wife, or I just lost my brother, and all hell's breaking loose, but I'm done. I'm not fighting anymore. And you can't be like that. You have to actually be able to shut that off and stay focused on the goal, which is what? Salvation, right? And that's why the Lord said we have to endure on to the end. So yes, the times that we're coming into are going to be very trying. And how trying do you think it was for the 7 brothers in the book of Maccabees, watching each brother die in front of them, and then the last one being tempted and still going and taking that like a man? A lot of people would have folded because their minds would have told them that shit hurts. You're getting scalped. You're getting thrown into a big ass frying pan and getting fried alive. Who wants to go through that? But by being locked in and having faith in the Heavenly Father, he regulates your spirit, right? As Paul said, basically having your flesh subject to your spirit and not the other way around, that you may make those spiritual decisions and be able to, you know, afford to endure in these times to come. That's it.
Hey, hey, Con, you know, I don't got no examples like that. Y'all brothers is wild. You know, it's like nah, nah. But you know, hey, we all had it. You know, we all still do have it within us too, right? To snap and you know let our emotions, um, you know, can get the best of us. But that's what I said like before. Like the truth actually really taught us, and through you know the just putting on Yahweh you know, taught us to be able to control that, which is virtues that are needful, you know, in order to endure and to the end. Because what we're talking about is just certain situations and examples that are like not too detriment, right, or not too strenuous on us, and we react in a certain way. But how much more when you're talking about, you know, the hour of temptation, right, the Jacob's trouble, all of that is to literally try you and to test you, and that testing is really tied to your faith in your you know discipline that you have in the words of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. So having a scripture here in 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 2 Peter chapter 1 verse let's start at 4. It says, whereby are given unto us exceeding and great and precious promises, that by these ye might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lusts, right? And lust, as we know, right, it pertains to the flesh. Okay, the desires that your flesh, you know, want, which is why the scripture says, um, you know, the love of God, you know, basically goes against like the lust of the eyes and the lust of the flesh and the pride of life. And if you have those things, then you don't have the love of the Most High within you. Because people that really desire or care about, you know, or have provisions of the lust of the flesh, they're not thinking about the spirit, and they're not going to be moving in the spirit, right? Paul spoke about how the spirit warreth against the flesh and the flesh against the spirit, right? They don't have the same mindset. And you see a lot of people that are emotional, they're not spiritual, right? Most people who are emotional are not spiritual, which is why, you know, most, you know, women, and not to get on the women, but most women aren't spiritual. And that's how the Lord just set them up. Now, you do got certain sisters that, you know, are you know, more rational and more spiritual than others. And because of that, they're less emotional. But, you know, an emotional trait is something that I think the brother mentioned, like this world actually promotes, right? Being emotional, being, you know, what's the word? Intemperate. But the spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai actually teaches you the reverse of that. So reading on verse 5, Salaki, it says, And besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to your virtue knowledge, right? So your faith, obviously your faith in the Lord, and what they have for virtue here, they have moral excellence, right? So the higher you add to your faith, the more of your moral excellence is extended, right? You now start to think about morality, which is something else that this world doesn't teach us, right? People don't care about they don't care about what morals, right? They care about what feels good or what they think is right and wrong, right? It says it says, and to add to your virtue knowledge, and to your knowledge temperance, right? Which that word temperance, get that in the Greek. Let's see if I can play it. Ekratia, which says self-control, the virtue of one who masters his desires and passion, especially his sensual appetites. Okay, his sensual, which means what the senses, the appetites or the desires of of the carnal, because we're in the carnal, but we don't walk after the carnal. So somebody that is that has the virtue of temperance, then they're able to control, right, their desires, going back to the word, or master their desires and passion. And really, our desires and passion now become toward the spirit. So now we are self-controlled, are controlling ourselves to be more spiritually minded, right? And when you're spiritually minded, that's going to add to what? I believe the next one is patience, right? Because after, where were we? Yeah, after the temperance is patience. Because when you are in the mindset of a spirit, the spiritual, all we're doing is really going throughout the day to day, waiting for the kingdom, right? That's all. That's literally our lives, right? We go throughout this one day to the next, just waiting for the day of the Lord, waiting for the return of Yahweh Shai. And that takes patience. You see, and going into patience, I had pulled up a Stoic, right? Because, brothers, elders, learning from the elders about Stoicism or being a Stoic is something, once again, that this world doesn't teach you, which is how you know that, Esau, right? The philosophers and the Stoics of the Roman times, more than most of them were Jake, because you don't see the elites of this world, practicing Stoicism, right? They have all the ability to do it. They have all the time in the world to do it, but they're not practicing that. And when you go into Stoicism or being a Stoic, it says generally means someone who is able to endure hardships or pain without showing their feelings or complaining. They are often described as calm, composed, and not easily upset, even in challenging situations, right? And we know that those challenging situations that we're coming into is for the carnal man. They're going to be easily, upset. They're going to lose their composure. That's why a lot of people are going to take that charagma, because if you attack somebody's essentials to life, right? Not being able to buy stuff to eat, not being able to buy stuff to wear, not being able to have, buy stuff to sleep. That's your essentials of life. Anybody is going to become irate and become irrational if they're lacking those things, or if those things are being taken from them. But somebody that is, a spiritually minded, right, that has these spiritual virtues, and that also, by nature of walking in the spirit, practices that stoic mindset, then we're going to be able to keep that calmness and coolness in those type of situations, which ultimately goes back to what? The wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, as we always speak about in Isaiah 33:6. It says, in wisdom and knowledge, and Salaki, in wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times. So not reacting just off of your emotions. It's not going to be, your strength, right? It's not going to be how loud you can yell somebody, or how your ability to be able to talk your way out of something. Because the Lord even told us, right? They'll take no thought on what you shall speak in those days, right? Because if you did, then you'll probably come up with something emotional to respond to, trying to say, "Oh no, it wasn't me. You lying on me, X, Y, and Z." he's still not going. He's not going to care that he's lying on you. He knows he's lying on you, right? He's not going to care that you try to say he's lying on you. So you getting emotional and trying to figure out a way on your own to try to get out of these situations really could have you in a worst case situation, which is why the Lord said, don't even think about it, right? Don't even try to fix your mind to think about it, because the Spirit is going to guide you. But reading the back, and wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times and strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord is his treasure, right? So really, fearing the Lord adds, that's where it all starts to getting these virtues. When you fear the Lord, all of the other things they come along with it. That's why Yahweh Shai said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and everything else should be added unto you. And these virtues are necessary in order for us to endure these times. And also, these are going to be the virtues of the foundation of the kingdom to come, right? The Lord is setting us up now to be in this mindset for the kings to rule, his kingdom in righteousness. This is how righteousness is going to flourish. It's going to be by way of a moral standard that is based off of rationality, logic, right, wisdom and knowledge, okay, and temperance, self-control, right. So you got it.
I got Oh wait, was the brother gonna go?
You that brother that's gone.
Khan. Oh, good.
I just got one of my favorite quotes is anything you can't say no to is your master and you its slave. And that basically means like a man becomes a slave to anything that he cannot walk away from, whether it be for like pleasure, woman, or bad habits, anything of that sort. And then I remember this precept, this book of James, chapter 1 and verse 20, for the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. Right. So if you're angry, you literally cannot do anything to please the Lord in that anger. So it's best to like go calm down before and think before you basically what's that word? Before you take action. I just wanted to bring that up.
I had a precept here in the book of Joshua, the 7th chapter, and this is concerning this man, Achan. And this man was the one who, when Jake was led by Joshua to go and defeat the city, Ai, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but which is in Jericho, from which they were going from Jericho to Ai, and the Lord told him, don't take anything, right? You simply just destroy anything in that city. But this man went in there. He saw some nice Babylonian garment. Jake always want to be dripping shit. They have no control. Like, and that's what he did. Because he has no control of his life. He was risking curse from the Lord, destruction, just so he can fulfill the flesh. And this is pretty much something that like Bukwa said, it's not always anger that we ought to be mindful of, right? And this is a perfect example of that, because Jake's out there in the hour of temptation, even if they know the name Yahweh Shemar Shai, even if they've been serving the Lord even if they served the Lord before, because of them being attached to this world, because Jake can't let this fucking world go. If push comes to shove, if he has to no longer, have his nice car, he may have a BMW, whatever fat ass whoop he's driving, whatever Hellcat he has. If he has to lose that, Jake was gonna stop, serving the Lord just so they can keep that. And it sounds like a crazy thing, because of how much we love the Lord. We will never give up anything in this world. But trust and believe there are some people out there who will pick the perishable things in this world over the Lord. And the primary reason for them making that stupid decision is because they don't have discipline. And like I'm not even brought out that quote. When you can't say no to something, what was it? Like you become a slave of it? Right? And
yeah,
Khan. And the scripture talks about serving mammon and serving God. You can't serve two masters. So if you are a slave to one master, which is mammon, He's going to tell you don't serve the Lord, which is why people do some stupid shit like that and make themselves enemy of the Lord. And that's why the scripture says that, Joshua's anger was so infuriated because foolish men like that can't be around a congregation. They caused a lot of good men to die when they went up there to battle. So the Lord had it to where him and his entire household were burned to death. And this is symbolic as to what's going to happen to people now who choose the riches of this world over the Lord. The anger of the Lord is what is kindled against him. And the Lord is going to make sure that ain't nobody who is that kind of nigga is going to be what is going to be in a chariot. The Lord is going to, that's why the scripture says that this kind of separation is going to be done by the angels. It's the angels that are going to meticulously pick out the righteous men aside from the wicked men, right? And that's why everybody, it goes right down to the soul, because the angels, they know exactly who you are down to your spirit. Just like we may not be able to tell who's an Israelite, because of faces, the angels, they can tell. And they can tell the kind of spirit that you have on in them too. And when the Lord tells them, I know this guy, he's a nigga, kill his ass, the angels won't hesitate to take your spirit. So it's very serious for you to take this. I mean, to me, this lesson is very serious. It's not just for brothers and sisters watching, but to me as well. Me personally, this is a very edifying lesson, and it hits home. Because controlling yourself can destroy your salvation. In other words, you can have all the wisdom and knowledge in the world, just like I read in the book of Ecclesiasticus. If you have all the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and you don't show it to the Lord, it's useless to him. If you have a treasure that's hidden and you don't do anything with it, the treasure is basically useless. And the Lord doesn't like that, So, yeah.
I had
Hey, yep.
oh, sorry.
You got it, bro. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. If a brother could, I'm on the road, Salakia. How about Shemesh Abrakatham, if a brother could pull up Ecclesiastes 7 and 9, I believe it is. The
Yeah, I already
spiritual.
got that on here. I got you.
Oh, that's crazy. We always linked up. But yeah, it's crazy because today is July 9th. I was thinking about that. But Ecclesiastes 7 and 9.
Yeah, you're breaking up. Yeah. Don't waste your
Yeah,
breath.
I figured he said if I could read it, I'll read it for you.
All right, the water.
So this is kind of good. This is Ecclesiasticus chapter 7, verse 9. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools.
Right. And that scripture just sums it up, man. Anger is an emotion that leads to the demise of many men. You see, and laying backing off Ayash's point, I definitely agree and concur that this is an important topic for brothers to speak on, and exhortation for ourselves and for others, because I'm getting edified and built up. And there's certain things about myself that I'm listening to what brothers are saying, and I'm like, man, I need to apply certain of these principles more, because we all have things we have to deal with, and scriptures also says that oppression maketh a wise man mad. So is it wrong to be angry? No, but it's how you deal with your anger. It's how you're able to channel your anger into a positive influence. Go work out, go train, go read, pray, build with brothers, have your outlets. But when you're hasty to be angry, like niggas in the street, they're quick to flip over anything, right? And one little conversation could lead into bodies getting dropped with Jake. You look at some of these videos where judgment happens. One minute the dudes are talking, the next minute somebody got 5 holes in their chest. You see? So anger really does rest in the bosom of fools, and be not hasty to be angry, because again, going into the aspect of stoicism, and I have one more. If a brother could pull up Wisdom of Solomon 8 and 7, that aspect of stoicism is something I didn't think about a lot. That basically it's somebody who is able to control their emotions on a very high level, where they're not phased. And the scriptures also talks about not being your faith not being overthrown, you know, by the greatest of trials. I forget which word it is, but it's somewhere in the New Testament. But yeah, we're going through a fiery trial, and if we were to have the same emotional mindset, overly emotional mindset of our people, then we would be in a lot of situations on the highways and hedges. We'll always be ready to fight somebody. You know, we would be going through constant turmoil, man. Seeing a mow out in the street, you know, that makes you angry. But you have to be able to control your flesh. And we all have to be able to control our flesh. And that's all part of trusting in the Lord, because we'll see things that anger us. We can't act on it. We can't do anything about it. We just have to give our petition to the Lord. Does a brother have Wisdom of Solomon?
Yeah, I got you.
The water.
This is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 8, verse 7. And if a man love righteousness, her labors are virtues. But she teacheth temperance and prudence, justice and fortitude, which are such things as men can have nothing more profitable in their life.
Right. And when you go into this verse, this is a famous verse, especially in the ancient world. A lot of the philosophers that followed, which many of them were Jake, when you go into Greek philosophy, they took a lot of things from Solomon. A lot of what they got is from the scriptures. When you deal with Stoicism, when you deal with this verse, it's going into the 4 pillars of wisdom. And for time's sake, I'm just going to get to the point, the one about temperance, okay? But those 4 pillars of wisdom are very vital. And that's why I said that these are things, you know, wisdom is not just one-sided. There's different aspects to having wisdom. You could be strong in one aspect of wisdom and weak in another. And self-control and overcoming one's emotion is a very important aspect of having wisdom, because certain situations, the scripture says that if you blow on a spark, I'm paraphrasing, but if you blow on the spark, it will become, you know, basically a fire will come. But if you spit on it, you can end that spark, right? And both of those things proceeds out of your mouth. So when you have a certain sense of temperance, you're going to be able to weave through situations and apply wisdom to where somebody, you know how to use subtlety with people, and a soft answer turns away wrath. Sometimes you have a situation where you could be entitled to snap on somebody, but instead you don't, and you apply logic, and then they're like, damn, this guy right here, he's actually a logical person. Like, I don't know what I was I was tripping. Then the person questioned themselves, you know, after you apply logic and wisdom, you know, and you don't get overly emotional. That's also where it says that you will heap coals of fire on their head. That's a part of having wisdom, because the natural reaction is somebody's your enemy. If somebody's doing wrong to you, you're gonna want to, I gotta get it. The world teaches you will get your lick back. Give that same energy. But the scripture says, recompense to no man evil for evil. And also that if you're kind to your enemy or somebody that does you wrong, you heap coals of fire upon their head. That means what? They're gonna have a guilty conscience. A guilty conscience, because they're like, man, this guy is calm, cool, and collected, and I'm over here tripping. You see, but that's all a part of that wisdom, and that's something that's going to be life-saving type of mindset in these last days. You know, but that's it. You brothers got it.
Hey, Khan. Yeah, I was going to add a quick point real quick. And another testimony when we were growing up, you know, they used to, our parents, our caretakers used to always, you know, tell us like stories and stuff, like proverbial stories, and they always had a theme or a message in there. And they used to call it Anansi stories, right? And there was this one particular story where you had the spider, his name was Anansi, and he decided that he wanted to gather all the wisdom in the world, like all the knowledge there is on the earth. He wanted to gather it all. So one day he took a pot and he went around the whole earth, all 4 corners. You know how spiders be in the corners and shit. So this nigga hiding in the corners and shit, dealing with people. And he just gathered, asking questions, talking to them, and he's gathering all this information and he's putting it in the pot. Because he said, well, if I have all the wisdom in the world, if anybody wants to do anything, they're gonna have to come to me for some of my wise words. Hence, I become very important, right? So he's got all this wisdom in his pot, And he said he's going to go climb up a tree somewhere and hide all that wisdom where nobody else could ever reach it except for him. So he put the pot in front of his belly. And as he's climbing up the tree, he's having a hard time doing that. So his son, one of his sons, standing there looking at him, he's looking at his dad struggling and shit. He's like, Dad, why are you doing it this way? Why don't you just put the pot, because it has a rope around your neck, instead of putting it in front of you to for you to struggle going up the damn tree? Why don't you just put it behind your back so you can have more leverage to climb up easily? And he heard his son. He stopped. He looked back. He looking at his son. He got mad. He got tight. He's like, this motherfucker here, I thought I had all the wisdom. This little kid just gave me some wise words. Now I'm mad. So he got so pissed, he took the whole entire pot of wisdom and threw it, and it shattered onto the ground. And the theme is, once it shattered, all the wisdom spread throughout the whole world, and hence men got wisdom as well. So that's the theme behind that. And the reason, the story behind that all is because of his anger, right? It says, scripture says, what anger lieth in the bosom of fools. Because he thought he was getting all that wisdom, but yet his son says, yo, why are you moving like a fool over there? You should put the pot behind your back instead. So his anger caused him to slam the damn pot down, and then all the wisdom escaped and everybody else got wise again. So it defeated the whole purpose, right? So stories like that are very, very important, because even as kids growing up, it's good to tell your children these kind of stories. Make them up if you have to. Go into the scriptures if you have to, right? So that they can understand the theme and the importance of it. Right? It might be funny, right? It might have a very sad ending. It might have something, but at least they understand, oh, this is this is that, this is that. Our dad used to tell us stories about David and Goliath and all these different stories, and it stuck with us, right? In the sense of, oh, having faith, even if things might seem out of the way, or you might seem like you don't have enough strength or power to overcome whatever obstacle, you keep your faith in the Lord like David did. Right? And with 5 stones, he went up there, and just with one, he did what he had to do because he had the Spirit of the Lord. So when you hear that as a kid growing up, when you hear stuff like that, it gives you that confidence in the Lord. Like, oh shit, I can do that. Anything happens, I can just call upon the Lord and trust in the Lord and just go head on in it, and I'm gonna prevail. So it's important to always remember these things. That's why, again, Romans 15:4 is there. Everything written aforetime is written for our learning, that we through comfort and patience of the scriptures might have hope, right? So it's always good to go into these kind of lessons, all right, to always remember the importance of patience, right? Faith and patience always go together. That's why it's written in the book of Revelation, our faith, the Lord is going to reward us for the faith and the patience of the saints, right? So faith and patience always go together. And if you couple those and you actually excel in how to utilize those two things, it's very rare that you're going to find yourself in some heat or some trouble, because not only is it beneficial in the sight of the Lord, which is the number one thing you want to do, but also in the sight of men, right? Many times we go out when we deal with people and they're like, yo, man, you mad humble. Yo, man, you mad patient. Yo, man, because people piss you off, they frustrate you. But rather than just pout that, this nigga, just relax and just deal with them. Just don't even show. Hey, that's why the Zaquan brought out the definition of a stoic, right? Stoicism. You don't show any emotions of anger or frustration. People can't get that out of you. Even if they try their best, you're always on some even kill type of energy, where it's like, why am I bothered with this guy? He's not even going to react like that anyway, And that's how Esau gets so mad, because here it is, they do all this propaganda BS, call us Black Hebrew Israelites and a cult and all these different things, and we stay hammering them, coming at their helmet with the truth. It doesn't faze us, because we're not here for them. We're here to give them and the whole world a message. As the Lord told Jeremiah, he has made us prophets unto the nations. So we have a job to do, whether you like it or not, whether you fear us or not, whether you like what we say or you hate it or whatever the case may be. We're not here for you. We're here to serve the interests of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, and also to usher in the coming of our Lord Yahushai to stabilize all things, right? So that's a huge mission. That's not no easy undertaking, right? So we do that with what? With fervor, with vigor. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes you might get hit left and right with little shit here and there, but just stay even keel and let the Lord do his thing. All right, but you got it, bro.
Yeah, a quick precept. This is Proverbs 28 and 25 and 28. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. All right, and that's basically a defenseless city. which means that it's vulnerable to anything, right? The elements, wild animals, it's vulnerable to attacks from any which way because it has no defense. But how is one that has no rule over his spirit like a city that's broken down? Pretty much like I'm not brought up that point. Anybody can come in and provoke you, right? And anybody can use your anger against you. That's what you see. Like 9 times out of 10, people who are wiser, especially these if you look at these masterminds, when they plan and plot things, they usually try to find somebody who is very well composed. They try to find their weak point. What is their vulnerability? Meaning, what triggers them, right? What can I get to get this guy off his game? And when you watch, like, for example, even that Netflix TV show, that's what this guy does. Joe Goldberg, he watches people, he learns them, he studies them, he finds out what makes them tick, and then he uses that to his advantage against them, right? Like Love, right? Love Quinn, whatever his woman, and you know how he basically messed with her mind. Now, what's also very interesting is the truth is actually one of the best teachers of this kind of discipline. And the reason is because you have situations where you get very upset. Somebody does something to you, right? And you're in the street and you see this one guy, he's upset and people are trying to hold him back. Yo, bro, chill, and that. Nah, fuck out, get off me, bugging out, I'm beat this thing's ass, right? And he's ready to go do what he got to do. But there are certain situations where if there's somebody that you fear or respect enough, they tell you to chill, you're going to chill, right? So the reason the scriptures are the best teachers is because we do this not because we were taught this in the world, but ultimately from the fear of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. That's like the ultimate source that none of us can go past that. You could be mid-heated argument, but the second you're proven wrong with scriptures and it's shown to you, it doesn't matter how hurt your emotions are. You have no other option but to say, Khan, you're right. Because if I go any further, now I'm not fighting you. I'm fighting against the spirit of the Lord, right? I'm fighting against the words of the scriptures. Am I going to sit here and say the scriptures are not true because a brother rebuked me with the scriptures, right? So that's a line that we can't cross, right? That's a fear that we can't overcome, which is a fear of the Lord. And that's why it says that's the beginning of wisdom. Because the fear of the Lord keeps you it always keeps you in check. Nope, I can't do that, right? Because the Lord is always watching. I can't do this to this brother. I have to do this. I have to do that because the scriptures demand it to be so, even if I don't want to. And you do that once, twice, 3 times, enough times, it becomes a part of you. And that's why that's one of the main things these Stoics, right? The Stoic philosophy, they focus on, which is your mind, right? If there's anything that should be untroubled, your inner sanctuary, it should be your mind. Nobody and nothing should be able to mess up that inner tranquility, which is in your mind. And that comes by just actually thinking, right? If you stop and you look at 99 of the things that piss you off and you think about them and why they piss you off, you'll find out that sometimes you don't really need to get pissed off at it, right? You watch a certain situation, like a woman does something to you, right? And it's like, oh my God, these freaking women, man. But you understand that is the nature of a woman. She does do that. She will wake up and just try to test you just because, or she'll make a big deal out of nothing because that's their nature. And when you understand that, you're like, you know what? Why am I even getting upset? Right? This is her nature. This is how she acts. And I remember one time I was speaking to someone, it was a chick, and I said something, and Jake, right? I said something, but I think it offended her or she got upset or whatever the case was. So she hung up. And I was pissed, right? I was pissed. I'm like, who the fuck? Who you hanging up on? Man, you don't ever hang up on me like that. But I for a few seconds, right, before I even sent a message or called or anything like that, I sat down and I actually thought about the situation, took myself out of my perspective and put myself in their perspective and thought and said, from the receiving end, if you heard what you heard, right, given the situation that it was, whether you're arguing or not, how would you have felt? And just those few seconds of actually thinking through, I actually reflected and I was like, yo, I was actually wrong, for what I said or how I said it. I'm actually in the wrong here. They have a right to be upset, and I was like, hey, you know what? There's no need to go and make it a bigger deal. So the power here is instead of acting based on what you feel right away, stop and actually think it through. Because in most cases, you don't have to be upset about that. And if you can get to the point where you control what makes you upset and what doesn't, by understanding what you do have the power to control and what you don't have the power to control, you will be one of the most powerful individuals out here, because nothing can just provoke you. It doesn't matter what they say to you. Why is somebody calling me a fool gonna upset me? Am I a fool? No. Why? This person doesn't pay my bills. They're not gonna give me salvation. So why do I actually care what they say about me? Yo, your outfit looks mad ugly, bro. You look stupid wearing a dress out there teaching the Bible. Why should that actually upset me? I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna eat. I'm gonna live my life like everything is all good. Like I didn't even meet this person today. So why should I jump off of the camp sign and DDT this guy into cement concrete, and then the cops come and now I'm in trouble? You know, these are the things, if you stop and think about it, you realize you don't need to do that. But sometimes people only do that thinking after they've done it. It's like post-nut clarity, but this is really post-emotion clarity. Somebody hits you, you beat them up, then you think, oh shit, I didn't have to do that. But that's it on that.
I got a quick quote to back up both you and Haran's points. This is one of my favorites. It's men are not affected by events, but how they view them. So like stuff will happen around you, but you cannot control that. But what you can control is how you respond to those events. And yeah, I just give a quick example because I work. You know, people when the flow is like a lot and people are getting hit, you see this one guy getting angry, yelling, screaming, and you see multiple people getting like that. But for me, I'm like, okay, we're getting a lot right now. What can I do to make the situation a little bit easier? And so, I go do what I gotta do, and then I help other people out, and then ultimately everyone becomes happy again because of those actions I took. But for the guy that got angry, he got sent home because he was yelling about to turn, because he was yelling like he was about to turn Super Saiyan. I'm like, damn, you got sent home, your hours were cut. But for me, I got more hours. So I was like, shit, okay, thank you. Thawada Yahweh Shemel Shai. And I got another example. This was years ago. So, brothers were in a car, we were chilling. And then I remember Haran, he said that I just had it. He was like something along the lines of, do brothers not motivate you? And because like brothers were going to the gym and all that, and I was just there gaining weight. I was getting fat. And I didn't even notice it until Haran and the brother Ricard pointed it out. And after he was talking to me, I went home, I was like, the brother's actually onto something. And then that's when I started getting into the gym and all that. But I could have responded negatively, but no, I thought about it and actually began to improve myself, work on myself because of that. And then I had this other quote from Sun Tzu, I believe that's how you pronounce it. And it reads, if your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him. So, and you see this, it wasn't until after I read this, it wasn't until after I read this quote that I began to I see it. Because it happens all the time everywhere, even in anime. And then after I read this quote, I was like, it all makes sense now. So I was like, because you have the hero and the villain, and then every little thing you can see the hero is throwing insults and stuff and saying a lot of shit to basically get the guy more angry, and then it basically throws the villain off their game, and he's over here making mistakes left and right, and the hero takes advantage of that. I'm like, it makes sense now. Okay, but yeah, that's all I had.
Speaking of quotes, with the I got one too. But this one popped into my mind when Haran was making his point. But I just want to share my screen here real quick and show you because I'm going to reference a plant, and I don't really know what that plant is. But if Zaquan, you could just allow that to be shown. Yeah, right here. It looks like this. And the proverb is pretty much that this plant, this is its name, says it will abdicate its position under the plantain tree so the sheep can ravage it. And the reason is that this plant is it's kind of poisonous to sheep, right? And so when it grows in your farm underneath the your plantain, forest, it actually protects the sheep. If a careless sheep herder kind of leaves him, doesn't care, leaves him into your farm, and they can just ravage your whole crop, and then now all your hard work is undone. So a lot of times these things are left in there for security, but a lot of times people really associate them with weed, because if you're a farmer, you constantly have to go in and kind of weed around your plants, and they always constantly get mad at it and they start cutting it down. And so the problem pretty much is that because people don't appreciate it, because people are so angry to curse it out and cut it off, it's usually not there to do its job and protect. That's why it always abdicates its position under the plantain tree, so the sheep should just come in and ravage the plantain tree. And so that's pretty much the point that came into my head. And it's in the best interest, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you, for you to have these temperament that we keep talking about, because you are a problem, not just for yourself, for everybody. If and even I should have even brought it out, because you can be a murderer just because you can't control your emotion. You can become a thief where you can't control your emotions. You can destroy anything that someone has built when you can't control your emotion. And so, if the Lord is trying to establish the kingdom of heaven and he wants, the first fruits in there, your ass can't be in there, because if you have a destructive character, he's gonna make sure your ass die here on this side, in the missiles, before you come through to the other side. That's why it's important to make that transition and on your own on this side, unless until the time that the Lord comes in and finds you on like incomplete in that transition, and then I'm gonna have you do this transition some other way. So that's pretty much the point of this on that. And it's just a whole lot of points come into my head, because this is such a great topic. And like I should have even said, there's a lot of scenarios popping into my head, and I'm like, damn, I could have gone about this a little differently, especially in my job. These fucking Edomites get, but it's always like that, they always want to shit on Jake, they always want to create, secretive groups and but it's all about having control over your spirit and moving and maneuvering in a professional manner, so that you don't cause the ministry to be offended. Yep.
Hey, Khan. But that's why we have Yahushua, right? Because the scripture says that he was reviled, right? He didn't revile back. Him being the actual only one that really had the right, to actually say something. Him being up on the cross, it says that he was as a sheep. What is that in Isaiah 53? I want to get that real quick. Isaiah 53, verse 7. It says, he was oppressed and was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before the shears is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. And when you think about, I think Haran said in the beginning, like when you get accused of doing something that you didn't do, it's a natural reaction out of emotions to, speak up or try to defend yourself, or try to say basically, try to defend yourself. But Yahushua, he didn't do that. And the reason why he didn't do that is, ultimately because he was appointed not to speak up, right? He was appointed to be, take all of this on and not actually even try to justify himself, because he put himself into the hands of the righteous judge. And then also I was just thinking about it, because a lot of times Yahushua said, I came to fulfill this, now this prophecy is fulfilled. Well, Isaiah, the 53rd chapter, was written obviously before Yahushua came on the scene. So he was bound to prophecy not to even say anything, and in his mind, he could probably want to have said something. Like he could have probably wanted to say, this is who I am, I'm about to do X, Y, and Z. out of just the emotional aspect of being, in the flesh, but because he was bound to, fulfilling the words of the Lord in prophecy, he had to actually take that without saying anything. And that's something that, we all have to, have in our minds as well, that, hey, if we want to be a part of the elect, then we are bound to, fulfilling the prophecy of the role of an elect as being, hated by all men, right? By being, ostracized and all these things that comes with, following the Lord in this world, but yet still remaining, pure, right? Remaining as it says in Revelation, whose mouths there was found no God. Okay, because if you try to justify yourself, then you're going to come up short, because we all technically are worthy of punishment, right? We all are worthy of any type of chastisement or any type of um, judgment we receive. So the only way that we can really be justified is if Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai justifies us, and that's not something that we can do through our mouths. Right? We have to actually let the Lord do it on for us. So I had another precept, just going in back into the theme of self-control. Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus 18, verse 30, right? It's one of my favorite scriptures. It says, "Go not after thy lusts, but refrain thyself from thy appetites." And when you go into that word appetite, it says a natural desire to satisfy a bodily need. And it says especially food. Okay. And it says a strong desire or liking for something. So going to the first part of the definition, a natural desire to satisfy a bodily need. And when you are carnal minded, then that's what your mind is, right? Your mind is always just trying to self-preservate, right? Or self-sustain, where they call it survival of the fittest type of mindset. That people naturally want to live, they naturally want to survive, they naturally want to feel good. That's why in this world they say, oh, just do what makes you happy, right? And when you say that, you're saying that to people that are carnally minded. You're not saying that to people that are spiritually minded, because this world, like we said before, doesn't this world doesn't push out a spiritual vibration. So people that are hearing this, oh, I just want to do what makes me happy, they're only doing that to fulfill the lust of the flesh, right? Paul spoke about whose God is their belly and whose end is destruction. When your God is your belly, your end is always going to be destruction, because you're going to want to once again preserve the natural man. And that is what Esau is going to use as a tool to entrap and snare people. The fact that they want to preserve the natural, right? They want to preserve their flesh. So he's going to take away the appetites that are necessary for the flesh, right? Which is what? Food and water, buying and selling those things that are necessary in order to live. But here it says, go not after thy lust, but refrain thyself from thy appetites, which is why the Lord told us what? That a man should not live on bread alone, but by every word of the Most High, right? Verse 31, if thou givest thy soul to the desires that please her, she will make thee a laughingstock to thine enemies that malign thee. Okay, now think about that on a sense of, right, the times that we're coming in, right? We know that Esau, speaking about the elites, right, and those that are joined with him, that they're our enemies, and they ultimately have a enterprise or a plan to try to get us to bow the knee, right, to try to get us to forsake the Most High, right, forsake being spiritual and become natural, right, become a naturally or carnal minded person. So here it says, if you do that, if you give your soul the things that the desires that please her, she's going to make thee a laughingstock to thine enemies that malign thee. Because at the end of the day, if you take that charagma, Esau is going to be ecstatic. Any Jake that take that charagma, Esau is going to be cheering, man. They're going to be in their bunkers or wherever they at. Oh, we got another one. But but for the elect, right? The ones that got the victory over the beast, it's because of their mindset is higher than the sensual. It's higher than the natural man. they don't make emotional decisions. It says, take not pleasure. Oh, no, that's another thing. But yeah, so at the end of the day, right, not being, succumb to the appetites of the flesh, although being in the flesh is the condition of the battle that the Lord gave us. And Yahushua, he is the one who did it perfectly. And through him, we now have, that road and that comfort that, hey, if he be with us, as he says in Revelation 3:10, then we're going to be able to overcome that as well. But we've seen that, him being an author and a finisher of our faith and having that faith, that we're going to be able to be sustained in this time and know that, yeah, we don't need to go to Esau for the things that we need physically. The Lord can and will sustain us. And we have plenty of examples of the Lord giving us, our provisions, our daily bread, in a time where it would seem naturally impossible. The Lord steps in and delivers us and advocates on our part. So, just, for me, just my last thing, just wrapping it up, keeping that mindset in this time is vital to salvation, right? It's vital to being somebody that the Lord is pleased in, because that is what Yahushua did, right? And we are trying to follow in that footsteps of Yahushua so that we can be joined with him as, joint heirs to the kingdom. But you got it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I got one last precept as well for me, and then I'm done. And this is in the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6, verse 15. And this is dealing with wisdom. And it reads here, to think therefore upon her is perfection of wisdom, and whoso watcheth for her shall quickly be without care. For she goeth about seeking such as are worthy of her, sheweth herself favorably unto them in the ways, and meeteth them in every thought. All right, and that last part is the key part right there, which is meeting them in every thought, because I always think of it like the last, like the gatekeeper, right, or the doorman, which is wisdom. And so before your intentions become, those neurons get fired either to your muscles to move, or to your mouth to say something, wisdom is going to be that filter, right, at that very point to stop you if it's going to be something detrimental to you. And that comes by way of Yahweh Ba'Sham Yahushai. So ultimately in that time, it'll be the spirit of the Lord that'll keep us really calm, right? That's a part of that stability in Isaiah 33:6. And so by us striving for that now, the Lord sees that and says, you know what? Your intention is good, but your effort won't be enough. So I'm gonna add to that with my spirit, and now you're good. Now you're in the face of death, but you're not panicking. And you yourself might wonder, oh shit, I'm surprisingly so calm right now. It's like nothing is it's really happening, and everything around me is chaos. Somebody just got their head chopped off. The next person behind me is crying, but I'm just like regular. Like I can't feel this fear anymore, and that's something the Lord can do. But in dealing with wisdom, meeting you at every thought, that's in many different ways. Like you could find yourself in a situation where maybe there's curfew, there's martial law, you're driving and you get stopped. The one thing you can't afford to happen, and you get stopped in some way, somehow, the questions the officer asks you, the officer asks you, what's your name? And the spirit just has you say some random Edomite name. They ask you for whatever ID, and you give them your ID. And the Lord can have it to where your picture, your face, and the name all match the fake thing you just said. They're going to run it through the system, and this made-up name apparently pops up and matches your license plate. And you're wondering, how the hell is this happening? But these are part of the things, the miracles that the Lord performs on your behalf. And you're just super calm. And then you just drive off. Everything is all good. And here it is. You were Jake with a nappy hair, but the Edomite sees you as like some old Edomite man driving some friggin' 1980s Honda or something like that, right? But these are all part of the things that you keep in mind. So when you're in these situations, you're not bugging, right? You're calm. You're like, you know what? Let me just go with what the spirit directs me to do, right? Somebody tries to provoke me. I want to snap, but wisdom says, hold on though. Is it really wise to snap right now? Because really you can just walk away. And then you walk away and you're good. You're driving. Somebody cuts you off. They do the stupidest thing. They're in the complete wrong. But what are you going to do? Are you going to speed up and crash into their car? Who's paying for that? That's insurance, liability. That's on you. Now your day is ruined. or you can go home and have a good old day, right? Like the famous Officer Brooks, You're Hurting Me, that video where you had that Judite woman who she didn't want to comply. She wants to be all arrogant and shit. Ended up in cuffs with her whole weave off. Now she wants to comply. Now I'll take the ticket. No, you don't get the ticket now. Now you get handcuffs and in the back of a cop car, right? As to where you could have ate a ticket, gone home, paid it. You didn't have to end up on YouTube getting exposed with inappropriate activities in a park after hours, right? But all of these go ultimately back to the point here of wisdom meeting you at every thought, right? In how you operate. Abraham, for example, telling Sarah to pretend to be his sister, right? To say that she was his sister. That was the point of him using wisdom because he didn't want to be put to death. Now he got found out, but it was to his protection because the Lord scared that king and told him, "Your ass gonna die if you touch this woman." See, so that's pretty much it on that.
Hey, if I may, what you said reminded me. Can brothers hear me?
Gone.
Yeah, what you said reminded me of y'all remember that video from back in the day where the dude got pulled over and he was kind of bugging out and the cop went up all up in his car and shit and started fucking him up and he started screaming the name of the Lord, but his spirit, the way he was doing it was completely wrong. Yahweh, shoot me, I was shy. Yahweh, shoot me, I was shy. He started tripping out. And it just goes to show you, like, even if you have the name, hey, if you're not in the right spirit, I mean, look at, this is going to be a whole nother, sidetrack, but ISUPK, they call upon the name of the Lord. And, you got the video. That's crazy. But ISUPK, they call on the name of the Lord, but them cats are telling you that John the Baptist wasn't in the truth. So, just calling on the name of the Lord, many will say in that day, Lord, Lord, so you got to have, also, we have to have the right spirit in mind and calling on the name of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, because if you're doing it and you're not sincere, or hey, the Lord will pull your card, man, and that can apply to any one of us. So we just have to examine ourselves. You got it.
Gone. Yeah, I got the video in the back. Yep.
God, here we go. So yeah, just a quick synopsis. This is where through the spirit, where the title of this lesson came from, right? So it's being an Amazon driver while Black in America.
See if I can...
Go talk to them. $170, I'm clear. All right, I'm getting orders to keep you contained right now, okay?
I can't talk with these cuffs on my hands.
Go talk to them. I got my supervisor on the way, and he'll give me the cool, okay?
Hey, the packages on the front porch.
Yeah.
Take a picture. That is protocol.
Yeah.
All right. And she refused to listen, so I drove off. Because I don't have time to be arguing. I don't have time to be in people's faces. I got a job. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. Then all these motherfuckers coming up with their cameras and talking all this shit, putting their fucking hands on me, but they not telling you what they doing. They only telling you what I did. I tried to drive away. She wouldn't let me. She ran to the van.
Real quick.
Ran inside the van.
Yeah, I don't think I can just hold it.
No.
You're good.
Oh, okay. Now I just want to say, just seeing how he's talking with all the extra gesticulation, that's how women talk, right? Like, certain men, you use your hand, but you over here like just doing all this, like, nah. You talking real effeminate right now. Like, you don't got to do all that. And as you're going to see, right, what the cop says, and we were talking, like, yeah, he's in the right, and that's the crazy thing. Like, he's actually in the right, but how he's acting is wrong, and that is a detriment to himself, right? And when you can be right and wrong at the same time, if you're not applying wisdom in the situation, right, not having situational awareness, you got it.
God. Yeah.
Ran to the van.
She ran to the van.
Ran inside the van, grabbed the packages, and tried to walk off. And I told her, you can't do that. You refused to listen to me, so I drove off.
Did you put hands on her?
No, I did not put hands on her.
Okay.
But Her husband put hands on me. I don't see him in cuffs. I mean, in cuffs.
Do you see how you're acting compared to them right now?
Because they the ones fucking with me. How you think I do this for the help, for the fuck? So this is unnecessary.
Once again,
this is unnecessary.
I've already explained to you that twice, 3 times.
Okay.
Now.
Have you ever seen somebody argue? Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen 2 people yell at each other?
Yeah.
Okay then.
And we separate them.
But yeah, I'm in cuffs.
Yes. That's the best I can do right now.
Because I never tried to fight them. What? For what?
Because they're not supposed to be in the front.
All right, but I never tried to fight them though. I never tried to fight them. That's why the cuffs is on me.
No, they're not supposed to be in the front.
They're not supposed to be on me in the first place because I didn't do shit.
Okay, well, he's a police officer. He detained you.
But I'm not under arrest because I didn't commit no crime.
Take the other hand.
So why the fuck am I in cuffs, man?
Stop cussing, please.
Yeah, so like we were saying, being emotional in this time and acting like this is not going to get you anywhere, and this is what Jake that are carnal, right, that are sensual or fail to realize that you're behind enemy lines, right? You're not in a place where you have freedom, especially now under Trump administration. Hey, you could be a quote unquote citizen and then still get dragged on to Alcatraz. I wouldn't be surprised if you finally see this nigga's face in alligator Alcatraz just for whatever reason. You see, but this is something that we could take because the scripture says that a smite, a scorner, and a simple shall be made wise, or something to that effect. That we see these things, and then it further, edifies us to know, like, okay, the way that we are and the mindset that we are in, they're going to have to do a lot in order to lock us up because we're not going to give them an inch. We're not going to give them any reason on a carnal sense to try to, take us, in and whatever. And that's why the scripture says that we're going to be found, without guile, because we're not going to be acting irate. We're not going to be doing all these things. And then guess what? It may be recorded when they come down and try to grab us up, or a brother might be by himself, somebody else grabs the camera, whatever. But it's going to be shown how, hey, we didn't do nothing wrong. They didn't say anything. They're acting calm. Why are you acting like that toward them? You see? And that's, the mindset, once again, of Yahushua, because it's recorded on how Yahushua responded, how he acted. Nobody can say, oh, yeah, well, he did say this, and then, he spat back, at the chief priest, and then, he didn't do none of that. So his legacy and his name is clean. And scriptures talks about, how a name is more precious than ointment, but that's it. That's all I want to say about it.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Hey, everybody good? Looks good. Okay. All right. So, hey, so yeah, just want to show that. And Lord willing, we're going to close it out with that. And this was edifying unto the elect, right? In closing, we want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.